YouTube, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today, guys, we will do a Master Duel tier list. Now, usually I do Master Duel tier list a week before the end of the month. But since we got the new selection pack and it was impactful with the format today, I kind of need to do a tier list here. So, yeah, we got new Snake Eye support in the form of Bonfire, some new Volcanic FTKs, new Battling Boxer cards, and of course, the new Unchained. So a lot of things just came out from the recent selection pack, the Blazing Arena. So with that, we're just gonna segregate them in this tier list here. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Decks that needs a good palette, rogue decks, and decks that needs more experimentation to be better. Without further ado, let's start, and we will start off with Battling Boxers. So Battling Boxers still needs more experimentation. There are some other versions as well where people are using Battling Boxers with Kashtiras, which is not half bad for a deck, but it's not a pure version. Then we have Black Wings. Black Wings still needs a really good pilot, and even with a good pilot, it's really hard to work or play with the current meta nowadays. Hand chops are still really prominent. You get Ash, you get Imperm, you get Veilard, and worst of all, you get Nibiru. Then we have Branded SPR. Still good on tier 1. The branded opening to 1 copy was kind of a significant hit. Cutting off its consistency, but as you might know, 1 branded opening less, they're just gonna add another branded card to their arsenal. Then we have the Dark World. Dark World, they have a new support in the form of Chlorless and the new Dark Corridor. So Dark Corridor and Chlorless was added to the game. I would say still needs a good pilot. I think the only way to play Dark Worlds is with Danger, and even with that, you still need a good pilot to go into your combo line. And of course, you need Jesus added into this deck because RNG is going to be on your side if ever you want to play this deck out. Then you have Dinomorpheus, really good tier 3 deck. There are some instances where you'll get a bricky hand, but with the help of the RES or the Unchained, it kinda helps out quite a lot in some scenarios. If you're opening a Rexstorm on the field, it's basically like a free win for you. Nobody likes to play up against a skill drain. Dinos, I had a ton of wins with Dinos even in the past seasons. I would sadly say that Dinos is basically rogue. Dinos are now readable with some other players. They can just Ash the Misk if they're trying to search the Arceosaur. Also, Nibiru is a problem and Maxio is also a problem. Exosister is really good tier 2 deck, and this is one of the few decks that actually uses or abuse Shifter in their deck. And they don't really mind if you drop a copy of Shifter because they're just gonna play through it. Floowandereeze, you know what? I'm gonna put Floowandereeze as a rogue. There are some instances where the deck bricks from time to time. There are some instances where you'll win with Harpy's Featherstorm, but in some cases, Harpy's Featherstorm is not really like your go-to card. Gold Pride, I would say it's basically rogue, even if you pair it with Punks and with the new support for the Exe or the Armored Exe. Still a basic rogue deck. Then we have Heroes. Now, I placed Heroes on tier 1 before and people were just furious. But honest to goodness, guys, Heroes still needs a good pilot to actually be good. Even before, people already know how to counter Heroes. As long as you counter the Faris or the Increase, you are good with the game. They can settle with the 1 mediocre board. And even with a good pilot, basically on a tier 3 status. But yeah, you still need a good pilot for this deck. Infernoble Knights. Infernoble Knights, I would say, really good tier 1 deck. There's not much people actually playing Infernoble Knights, including myself. The reason I think because of that is people don't really like to combo off for like half an hour. I think you need more seconds in your clock to play this game rather than cards in your deck. Kashtira. Kashtira is basically tier 3. The reason I just put this one on tier 3 is because they can still use Shifter and a ton of hand traps with this. If they don't, it's basically rogue, but one of the few decks that uses Shifter to its full advantage, of course, and a face up, a riser from the field, is just basically like banish all your cards. Labyrinth, really good tier 1. I think with a complete version nowadays where people are just running the RES, the Butler, and also the Unchained Monster, it's kinda unpredictable for the Labyrinth nowadays when they play. And if you are up against a really good pilot for Labyrinth, you are gonna have a hard time. Especially nowadays that they're running less trap cards and more monsters. They're just gonna like recurse everything there as long as they have the cards accessible to them. Vanadium, really good tier 2 deck. I can't say anything about this deck. It's still really good. You always have like a game plan with the cards on hand, even without an Ash Blossom or Cold Bite to help you out if ever your opponent drops a Maxi or a Nib. But yeah, really good tier 2 deck. Marinces. I really thought Marinces was like a combo type of deck where if you know the lines, you can just, you know, play through it. But I've seen a player, even if he has a sucky hand or a crappy hand, he can still make a ton of negates on the board. It needs a good pilot for this deck. Mathmex. Mathmex still a really good tier 2 deck. As long as Circular is on 3 copies, this deck is still really promising. We have here Mikanko on Rogue. Am I being too harsh on Mikankos? I don't think this is still a really good tier 3 deck. Maybe a good tier 3 deck, but going second all the time, it's just basically a luck of the draw. There are a ton of cards that can actually stop a Mikanko deck. Then we have Runic, Rogue deck. I would say there are some versions where people are running Volcanic for some reason. Still basically Rogue. With the new slip near, they're still having a hard time playing with the deck. Then we have the Pendulum Magicians, really good tier 3. I think it matches off with Endymions nowadays. Pendulums are really unpredictable, I would say. Plunders are basically Rogue. There's not much extra deck monsters that for the Plunder Patrol archetype that is a fire. I think there's only 1 or 2. But even so, it will be hard for the deck to actually play out. Punks, it's kind of like just like Gold Pride, not worth the play with the current meta. Purely's, I would say, I'm not sure if it's gonna be like significant enough if we'll get the additional quick play spell by next week or the Little Noir, but as of now they're basically Rogue. It's hard for the deck to actually play out. A Rescue Ace, really good tier 3 deck, possibly here though. Yeah, they don't mind if you maxi, you ash them, or even you draw and Lockbird, and Nibiru won't be like any effect for them. As long as you have the Hydrant and Turbulence on the field, plus your back rows, you're good. Resonators, I think this is a really good tier 3 deck. I've seen some people play out some good boards, even if they have a crappy hand. It's just from tier 3 or needs a good pilot with this deck. For me, I'm not really a good pilot with this deck, so I'm just going to put this one on tier 3. But you need to have an idea to play this deck out. I'm just going to put this one on tier 3. Rikas still needs a good pilot to actually play. Scareclaw, no, it's really hard with the current meta. Sharks got their new support, so in the form of the trap card and the Exe full armored, still Rogue, doesn't really matter. Sky Strikers, really good tier 3 deck, just because they work with spell cards and less monsters, and actually works for them actually. But yeah, go for maybe that one right there. Sprites need some more experimentation. I do believe sprites are still really good, but as long as you have the right deck cards that you can add with the deck, it would be good. Snake Eyes, tier 1, unchallenged, unmatched, and especially with the recent update for Bonfire, really scary. Super Heavy, possibly tier 3 or tier 2. You know what? I'm gonna put this one on. Yeah, this one here. The reason for this is because with the meta nowadays of a ton of hand traps, Super Heavies has all the hand traps that you can actually add in one deck. Although they don't use spell and trap cards, which is kind of sad, but yeah, that is the strength of Super Heavies, just using their hand traps. Sword Soul, really good tier 3 deck. Still, you know what? Needs a good pilot. Needs a good pilot. Even if you say this is a mediocre deck, it is still one of the promising decks as a synchro deck, and it can even defeat a Snake Eyes deck if you have, or if you know the cards by heart. So it needs a good pilot for this deck to actually be good. Synchrons, Rogue, honestly, don't play this deck. I play this deck a lot, but yeah, it's I don't really think this is gonna be like promising enough. Then we have Tearlaments, really good tier 2, possibly tier 1. No. Tier 2, just tier 2. The reason for this is because monsters nowadays either pops or sends cards to the graveyard. That's the strength of Tearlaments. Doesn't really matter for them if you send all their cards to the graveyard. As long as it's not a through battle, they will benefit from it. Maybe just here, I think. Yeah, just here. Thunder Dragons. Why am I still putting that one here? That's Rogue. Justina, Rogue. Trap Tricks. Really good tier 3 deck. The reason for this is you're using traps, of course. Really good control deck as well. If you are allowed to play this deck, then you can play this deck, even if you're going up against a tier 1 deck. Tri Brigade, there are some versions where it can be good, but it still needs experimentation. Unchained, I would say really good tier 2 deck. Maybe just here though, yeah. That I think that's kind of reasonable, but not to like go after or before Tearlaments. But yeah, Unchained really good with the new supports, and in the hands of a good pilot, this is still gonna be a tier 2 deck. Vanquish Soul, I would say tier 3. Yeah, tier 3. You know what, Volcanics, I'm gonna put this one on experimental. I think there are some other good fire decks out there that would benefit from Volcanic. Snake Eyes with the Volcanics is just basically FTK. It is really consistent though with the Snake Eyes, but if you're it's just basically you're playing Snake Eyes rather than Volcanic. So yeah, experimental. And we have the Zoodiacs on Rogue. Or no, wait, tier 3. The reason for this is, you know, they just handle one card and then a ton of hand traps that they can actually use. They can also pair it with Kashtira, which is kind of a formidable deck. I'm going to put this one here. Vanquish is good here. And then Zoodiac is going to be like here. No, here. So let's see. So that's basically our tier list, if I'm not mistaken. So Snake Eyes, Branidespia, Infernoble Labyrinth. We have Exosister, Spinadium. Okay. So far so good. I am happy with the tier list. I should really remove Thunder Dragons in the next tier list. Even so, those are the tier lists. And yeah, tell me your thoughts. I'm not anymore putting heroes in tier 1. So what are your thoughts on the tier list? Do you like the tier list? If not, comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Keep safe, good luck, and goodbye.